Welcome to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio, bringing you insights and strategies to help you create a magnificent and fulfilling second half of life. Here's your host, certified professional retirement coach and best-selling author, Dr. Dorian Mintzer.
I want to welcome everybody today to the Revolutionize Your Retirement Fourth Tuesday interviews with experts to help you create a fulfilling second half of life. And I thank all of you for coming. I also want to let you know that Holly Thomas, our guest, who I'm going to be telling you about in a moment, has very generously offered to donate a copy of her book for the best question asked as deemed by me. So hopefully that will spur you on to want to ask questions. I want to just move forward now and introduce you to Holly. And just to mention, I met Holly at a conference last September. And then she actually came and joined a panel that I was on in Sarasota at the Positive Aging Conference. And she's a lovely woman. Holly P. Thomas has been a featured speaker on behavioral finance, economics, and the banking system in diverse venues, from college classes to large groups of business owners. She's developed courses for instruction both at the university level and as CEs for CPAs. In 2006, based on her experience gained over 20 years as a corporate and private banker, she concluded that small business owners and successful executives often have substantial unmet needs for integrated personal and business financial plans. So she's built her practice around providing these clients with sophisticated financial planning and access to professionals who implement this integration of financial and life planning. She's enjoyed volunteering as an advisory board member of the Tampa Independent Business Alliance, Junior Achievement, and chairing the local United Way's Audit Committee, and speaking on behalf of LifePath, 2001 graduate of Leadership Tampa. She's a Florida native who studied in India, and Holly enjoys cooking Asian food. She occasionally scuba dives, snow skis, and picks up the piano, and lives in Tampa, Florida. Holly, I'm just delighted to have you with us today. And maybe you could start by telling us a little of what got you interested in this whole financial field.
Thank you so much, Dory, and I appreciate those kind words. I've always been interested in money from the time I was a child. My grandfather was a bookkeeper, and my father was a meticulous money manager, I guess you could say, although he didn't do it professionally. But I've always been interested in numbers and spreadsheets and finances, and that's what led me to major in economics in college and then get an MBA in my mid-20s. But it wasn't until I got my master's in economics in the early 2000s that I discovered this relatively new field of economics called behavioral economics. And it's a merging of the psychology of money decisions. Classical economics tells us that people always make decisions that maximize their profits and their wealth. That's like the underlying assumption. But behavioral economics says, wait a minute, we can come up with multiple examples where people don't make decisions that maximize their profit and their wealth. How could that be? It's because of the role of emotions in our decisions. And that just was so much more fun to study and learn about and practice how emotions affect our money decisions than doing a bunch of spreadsheets. So it was in the early 2000s that I really gained a passion for this relatively new field.
That's so great to hear. And the combination, I think you're so right that what we do and what we think we do are often such different things. So what exactly then is financial lifestyle planning? Because it sounds like that's what you do. And in a way, you've a little bit said, but maybe you can expand on that a little bit more?
Sure, I'd be happy to. A lot of what we think of with traditional financial planning involves numbers, and there was a book written called The Number. A lot of financial planning advertisement is premised upon the fact that you've got to have this number. And that when a lot of people walk into a financial planner's office, they're expecting a lot of numbers. But financial lifestyle planning goes beyond the numbers. It asks things like, why do you have money in the first place? What is money for? What do you want to use money for in the next chapter of your life? And it's looking at things in terms of just a static number, more like a dynamic range. It doesn't leave the numbers behind completely, but instead of saying, oh, I need X amount of dollars in retirement for my living expenses, you could instead come up with a range. If I had this amount, it would be acceptable, and if I had this amount, that would be ideal. So that there's a minimum and maximum range in terms of helping the professional that someone works with make prudent decisions about the financial plan. Because if we go at a financial plan with the assumption that I just want more is good, more is better, more, that's not going to get us anywhere. That's not going to help a professional come up with a real plan. So financial lifestyle planning is about understanding our goals, prioritizing them, coming up with a range for them, and allowing room for trade-offs along the way should not financial opportunities, but lifestyle opportunities present themselves. It's a more flexible way to go about our money management.
It makes a lot of sense. It's both a more flexible way, but it's really a more holistic way too. Because I really like what you're saying, that it's not just the number, but it's what do you want your money to? How do you want to be able to spend it? So it seems to me that it's tied a lot in with really the study of happiness. What's going to make you happy, or what's going to give purpose and meaning to your life? How does this financial lifestyle planning intersect with the study of happiness?
Yes, you're exactly right, Dory. There is a whole other field of economics called happiness economics. It actually exists, and there are people who study the relationship between money and happiness. When we conduct financial lifestyle planning, we're recognizing that it's not money that makes us happy. It's how we use money. Happiness economics tells us where and how we could best use money for our maximum happiness.
Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. Some of the happiness economic studies have been done in places like Kolkata, India, formerly known as Calcutta, India. And it was found that people in one of the poorest places on earth are happy in certain areas of their life. In fact, they're happier than people in America, one of the wealthiest places on earth. And what are they happy about? They're actually happier with their looks than Americans are. They're happier with their morals than Americans are. And they're happier with their self-image and their spirituality than a lot of Americans are. What they're not as happy about is, of course, their health. They don't have the resources we do. And their income. Not as happy as Americans are in that area. Not surprising. But many people I know who have gone to other countries that are poorer and visited them have come back with the statement that those people don't have very much, but they sure do seem happy. And a lot of what drives our happiness, it turns out, is not how much stuff we have, but who we spend our time with, for example. In other countries where people are part of a community and a family, they have more happiness in those areas than we do, where we're relatively isolated from our neighbors. All of this may not sound like it has much to do with money, but as we'll see when we get into the 10 questions, it does have to do with choosing where we live and how we spend our time.
And you're also really highlighting the issue that comes up so often, that having a lot of money, if you're isolated or you don't have friends or there's no family or you don't have good health, you're not going to necessarily be, it doesn't matter that you have all that much money if you're not being able to live life that gives the quality and the purpose and meaning that we all need. It just seems it's just really important. There's one question that's come up already that I'd like to ask you from Elizabeth, who's in Florida. She just wonders, what's the number one question that you get in your work when, say, a client comes in and they want help with their finances? Do they often come in asking about the number, or do some clients come in asking about some of these behavioral and happiness issues that you're talking about?
I would say it's split about half and half between people who come in with a number-based question and people who come in saying, not so much a question, but help me craft the next chapter of my life. But there's maybe 50-50 is a bit generous. There are probably more people who come in and say, I got this IRA and I don't know what to do with it. Something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Great question, though, Elizabeth. Thanks.
Help me. You mentioned that there are these kind of 10 questions related to whether and how money and lifestyle choices can make us happy and keep us happy. It seems to me that it might be really helpful to look at what those 10 questions are and where do they come from. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And Dory, would you prefer that I just list all 10 right now, or would you want to go through each one at a time?
If you want, why don't you mention them and then we can go through them one at a time? Just so people have a sense of what they are and maybe it can start resonating with people. And then since I'm aware of them, they're all important, so I'd like to go through them one at a time, but the overview might be helpful for people.
Okay, so the overview, 10 questions. Number 1, who to spend time with. Number 2, how to spend time. Number 3, what groups will I surround myself with? Number 4, what health resources do I need and want? Number 5, where will I live? Number 6, what are my needs? 7, what are my wants? 8, what are my dreams? 9, how will I stay mentally fit? And 10, how will I stay engaged?
Wow, they're such really important and great questions. They really are. I'd love it for us to go now question by question. And again, I want to encourage people, if you have comments, questions along the way, please share them, and I will integrate them into Holly's talk. But maybe we can start with who to spend time with and what's involved with that. That's a pretty big issue.
Yeah, it is. And the studies are pretty clear about this factor, and the number one determinant of our happiness is who we are spending time with. And when I talk to people, most people have some sort of family members that they are very happy spending time with, and spending time with family is of the number one importance to them. But how could that tie into money? If those family members are not close by, then some sort of money might be required in order to increase the amount of time spent with the family, or let's say it's friend, significant other, whoever, if it's not family that's involved. And on the flip side as well, there are people we can spend time with who don't make us happy, but, and again, I come back to family, perhaps we have some sense of obligation there or something, and that can actually cost us happiness. And again, we should be looking at how much of a financial vote we're going to make for spending time with or away from the people in our lives that either bring us joy or don't. And some pretty major decisions can be made the right or way or not so great way. For example, I had a client whose grandchild was getting in a lot of trouble, and they felt compelled to visit and perhaps purchase a place close by the grandchild. And they could afford it, but I just had the question, is that going to contribute to their long-term happiness at this stage in their life, or is it going to not? Who we're spending time with and a budget for that. Another point I want to make about spending time with family is when it comes to trade-offs. All of our resources are finite, and we might have infinite ways that we could spend those resources. But if there's a choice that has to be made between a material something or other and having funds to spend with people who give us joy, we will be far better off happiness-wise, if we choose to spend on being with the people who give us joy.
Mm-hmm. Which then leads to often needing to do some soul searching to really think about what is your sense of what your relationship and obligations are to family members. I know in the book I co-wrote, The Couples Retirement Puzzle, it's a big issue because you may have one sense of what your responsibility is and your partner may have another. And in fact, I'd love it if you could comment a little on that, of what happens with couples if you aren't totally on the same page of really deciding what's going to bring happiness. For one, it might be, even if it's a grandchild that's going to give them a lot of grief, maybe the belief or the hope is that it would bring happiness, and then the partner doesn't feel so, and then they have to figure it all out. What have you done a lot of work with couples around these kind of issues too?
I have, and it is not beyond me to call in a therapist if needed. Believe me, yes. I do not play therapist, but what I have found with the couples who've been successful at those kind of differences is I just try to create a safe place for them to have a conversation about it. And as with anything else in couples, compromise is really the answer. I do the best I can without calling in a professional, if I can, to give them a place to discover what's a good compromise. And I find that planting that seed and then giving them some space and time to figure it out for themselves leads them to come back with their own answer. It's not me dictating to them what's the best thing or what they must do. It's them deciding among themselves what little sacrifice they each can live with.
I think that's
a great question.
A good way to do it too. So that's good. Another question from Elizabeth, which I think is interesting because you're focusing on who to spend time with around family, which I think is a really big one. But what's interesting too is that oftentimes people, particularly in the second half of life, make decisions to live in communities. And there are different expectations of what people have of who they who they want to be in a community with. Some people want to move into a community where there are similar ages or multi-generational ages or similar values. But as Elizabeth points out, that homeowners in developments can be like 10 feet from each other and still not have a community of people to interact with. And so there still can be that isolation. So it's complicated is what it comes down to in terms of who to spend time with and how you want to build or not build community and what's going to give you happiness.
Yeah, just because you move to a community doesn't mean that it's going to come to you. You have to get out and make yourself part of it, no doubt about it.
Right. Another question that came from Bill, who's from Houston, and he was asking, and it's really, if it's okay with you, Holly, if we can, when we send out the recording, can we send out and just list what these 10 questions are so people can have them to be thinking about? Okay. So Bill, just to answer your question, thank you for your question on that, and we'll have Donna, who's going to send out the recording, include the list of these 10 questions. So what about how to spend time? Tell us about that question, and maybe you have some examples too from some clients.
Yes, so particularly when, and a lot of my clients are baby boomers, and they're on the cusp of the next chapter in their life, which many of us call retirement, but others call refinement, or different terms for whatever they're going to be doing. And I asked them how they want to spend their time, and many answer, I just had this yesterday, I've got a bucket list of places I want to see, travel. And that's great and wonderful and all in support of that. But what's really going to determine our happiness in that stage of our lives is what happens when we get up in the morning. What are we doing every day, as opposed to these wonderful 1 week or 2 week or 1 month experiences that we might have a few times a year. I think it's very important for people to figure out, not second by second, but in general, what do I want to do when I get up in the morning? How do I want to spend my morning? How do I want to spend my day? What would be like the ideal lifestyle for me? How do I want to be living my lifestyle? After who we spend time with, the second biggest determinant is how we are spending our time on a regular, the small things. How are we, little small things, that little small experiences, I want to say, that determine our happiness.
That's so important. Part of what I love, and I'm very influenced also by positive psychology, and in Marty Seligman's current book, Flourish, he talks about well-being, the three-legged stool, where it's connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning. And these questions are getting at that. And one of the really important questions is, what's going to get you out of bed in the morning? What's going to make life worth living? And it's so important. Another comment from Elizabeth from Florida, and she made a comment that reminded me too of Richard Leider, who's done a lot of work on life and purpose, and he has a new book out called Life Reimagined. And he has a quote which fits right in with what you're talking about, which is living in the place you love with the people you love, doing the, quote, right work on purpose is what brings people well-being and happiness. So I think that quote really resonates with what you're talking about here. So thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing that with us. What about the third question? What groups will I surround myself with? What have you learned about that?
Yeah, being involved in a group that fosters some kind of personal growth or personal development or spiritual development. A lot of people get involved in their churches and things. Those kinds of activities have also been shown to lead to happiness. To go back to Elizabeth's example about moving into the community, one of the best things somebody could do is find a group that they affiliate with that's involved in some kind of growth, that fosters friendships, that have with people that have like values. And so in thinking about the next stage in our lives and how do I want to spend my day, and understanding I like music, or I like sports, or I like engaging in sports or watching sports, and finding groups of people that share that and locating in a place where that can be done would be a recipe for well-being. And talking with your financial planner, if you understand that this type of group is what you're most attracted to, then that's going to help them help you decide where to spend your money and how to craft the financial lifestyle plan that's going to benefit you the best.
I think my sense is people are listening to you, Holly, and wishing that you could be their financial planner, that you lived everywhere because of having this kind of holistic approach. And it fits right into a question and comment from Mary, who's from Indiana, who says that spending time with her financial planner brings her unhappiness because he focuses on her husband's money and not their money jointly. And she says, what can I do to make this better besides finding a new financial planner?
You could just tell the financial planner exactly that. I don't feel like you're listening to me. I don't feel like I'm being heard in our meetings. And I do hear that a lot, that people, oh, Holly, I like your approach. And I'm not the only one in the world that uses this kind of approach, but it does take some interviewing and some vetting to find planners who get it. While there may not be a planner that will actually walk through these questions with you, if you come to your planner having done this kind of homework, they will be grateful if they're a good planner, that you are giving them some more guidance rather than them just assuming their autopilot is going to be to just go to the number and here's the income you can expect kind of thing. But if you help guide them and you respect them, you think they'll be receptive to that, answering these questions will get you a long way in your relationship with your planner.
I think that's a really important point, and that's part of what hopefully a big takeaway will be today with people on the call, that it may be a chicken and egg. It's nice if you've got a holistic life planner and their financial planner, and there are, as Holly says, a lot of people around. Not all, but many, and some people are getting more educated. But the other part of it is the more prepared you are and thinking about these things, you in a way can bring that holistic kind of plan to your financial planner, and their expertise may be more the money part, but you're able to say, this is how I want my money to work for me. This is what's important to me. These are what my values are. And you may really be able to develop it into a much more helpful relationship.
Yeah. I know I'm getting a plug for the book, but if you find that you're having trouble with a planner, the book does walk you through how to find one that's a fit for you, and it walks through these questions. But when you go to the planner as well, remember that a lot of planners are numbers guys. And I hate to say only 23% of my profession is female. Most of them are guys, and they're numbers guys. And they're very good at math, and they're very good at numbers, and they may or may not have had the training to understand that money's really more about lifestyle than numbers. But they're not bad guys. They just might need someone to say, hey, raise your hand, listen to me, this is what I want my money to do for me, and many of them will be very receptive. They've just not been trained to have that kind of conversation before.
Mm-hmm. So you could help train them too, which is
you can help train them, yeah, if you don't want to. You want to give them a chance, and you don't want to have to go shop for somebody new.
And let me give a little plug for Holly's book too, just to remind people that the title of it is The Mindful Money Mentality: How to Find Balance in Your Financial Future. And as Holly just said, and it's true, it explores these 10 essential questions and really will help educate you on how to be a more kind of informed consumer and an informed money person, so that you're on the same team with your money, and hopefully working with a financial planner who can help you best maximize what you have and maybe help make it develop into more. But let's keep moving along, and then we'll have time for more things. But the next question is about health resources. So what health resources do I need and want? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and I think this particular topic is not getting the press and attention it really deserves. A lot of press and attention when it comes to health and money goes to health insurance and how are we going to pay our health insurance and where the premium is going to be, et cetera. But I'm talking more about understanding what kind of a health consumer you are. And if you could draw an x-axis and a y-axis, on the x-axis you might put active on one end and passive on the other. And on the y-axis, you might put traditional on one end, and alternative on the other. And then you get 4 quadrants of different kinds of health consumers, and I won't go through all of them. But in a financial lifestyle plan, many people, professionals, forget that it's not just the health insurance. It's the massages, it's the vitamins, it's the acupuncture, it's the sometimes alternative things, it's going to a general practitioner that you just love, even though they don't take your insurance. If we don't have our health, if there's anybody on the call that's never been ill, I'd really love to know your secret. But if you think about the last time you were ill and how it affected your happiness, it's much harder to be happy when we're not healthy. And whatever health resources we need to be close to, that we need to bring into our lives, those need to be accounted for in the financial lifestyle. And when it comes to making decisions about, do I want X or Y with a finite amount of resources, if it's coming down to something that's a nice-to-have thing versus a health resource, again, we'll be much happier if we're choosing to spend on health resources that keep us feeling well.
Mm-hmm. What about none of us have crystal balls, but one of the realities that happens with so many of us living longer, hopefully healthier, but many people will be living longer with even multiple chronic illnesses as well as terminal illnesses, and it's hard to know what those expenses might be down the road. How do you help clients? What you've said so far, which is so helpful, is thinking about all these other aspects that have to do with health, the gym, the massages, all of the acupuncture, all those things. But what about the curveballs and the parts we don't know about? How do you help your clients try to anticipate, and what kind of cushion do you think or have you found is maybe helpful so that there can be some sort of being able to relax, that you're making the best choices that you can?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Dory. I build in a cushion in two places. One is that unless the client tells me differently, I make the life expectancy age 100. The statistics are that if a couple both reach their 65th birthday, there's a 50% chance one of them will live to age 100. First, I do that, and then secondly, I build in a contingency goal. It's just a place marker, and I let the client tell me how much they want to have as a contingency goal. Do they want, and it's usually somewhere in the range of $10,000 to $50,000, but it's not happening right away. It's happening down the road in the future. What do they want to build for a contingency goal? And then when we look at the probability that they will make all their other goals, we are able to see, okay, how likely is it that this contingency goal could be met if it was necessary? And some people are happy with there's a 50% chance I'll make that contingency if it happens, but many are not happy unless it's 99%. There's never 100%. Those are two ways I build a contingency goal, and I use a longer life expectancy. Other than that, it is really hard, and that's like having a crystal ball. I don't have one. Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on the pros and cons of long-term care, or is that a whole other topic probably, but just wondered if what your experience has been with helping people make assessments about how realistic it is to purchase that long-term care insurance.
Very glad you asked about that. That's actually the news flash kind of thing I would love more people to know about. Long-term care is changing. The long-term care insurance market is changing rapidly. And what's happening is that two big trends. The supply of insurance companies willing to provide long-term care insurance is shrinking, and the demand for it is growing. The second trend is that long-term care insurance is increasingly being issued on a gender-specific basis, which is a fancy way of saying they're going to discriminate against females because we live longer and tend to make claims on long-term care insurance policies, and males don't. Single females, I'm going to say from age 40 up, are facing a shrinking window for getting a long-term care policy. And I do not sell insurance. I just see this happening, and I'm a bit concerned. Now, we're a country of innovators, so one new innovation that has come out in the insurance world is a product called they call it a hybrid product, but it's a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider that is very generous, is not very expensive for the rider, and minimizes the life insurance portion. So you don't buy the policy to get the life insurance, you buy the policy to get the long-term care insurance. If people want some kind of resource to go find that, again, I don't sell insurance, but I know people who do, and I don't get commissions from anybody on anything. I'm happy to, in a side conversation, talk more about that. But I'm glad you brought it up, Dory, because I do want people to know that's a market that's changing rapidly right now.
That's good to know. And I saw, after I asked the question, I saw that Mary, who also thanked you for your response to her question, she said she thinks your 10 questions and your comments are going to help her approach her financial planner without feeling inferior. But she also, right after I asked the question, I had saw that she said, so it sounds like we all need to look more carefully at long-term care insurance. Is that right? So you just answered that too.
Yeah,
I think it would be, I'd like to hear about, I've never heard about this hybrid, so I'd like a side conversation with you to hear about that resource too, to learn more about it, because people often ask that. There's a lot of complex issues to think about. Question 5, where will I live? So tell us a little about that question and how that fits in.
Yeah, some considerations that I go over with some of my clients on where will I live is the kind of home. Of course, this is a normal decision many people make on the cusp of retirement. But one mistake I see people making sometimes is to keep the big house, the 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom house, because for Christmas or Thanksgiving, there's got to be a place for people to stay. And the sacrifices that have to be made to maintain that home, pay the taxes on the home, and just keep it clean, and it are pretty substantial when you consider how else you could be spending your money and your time other than in this big empty house, maintaining it just for 2 weeks a year when you're going to have people home. So that's just something, I'm not making a judgment about it, but I'm just trying to bring that to light for some people because it's an inertia thing that they might not have thought about before. And also how many homes, many people, particularly I'm from Florida, a lot of people from up north dream about having a place in Florida or moving to Florida. And there's no reason why you can't, especially in today's real estate market, put your toe in the water with something, a very simple kind of beginning with a different home in a different place that you might like. Florida people like to go to the mountains in the summertime, so we're sunbirds and everybody else are snowbirds. And a lot of people just assume I cannot afford that. But especially since 2008, 2009, there are options for things that might be affordable. And so I just encourage people to just look and just investigate to see if that's really their dream. And they can make all these other things happen, surround themselves with the groups and have the health resources close by to really think outside the inertia box in terms of where will I live and what kind of place I will live in.
Plus, I think it's helpful to recognize that some of these, like where will I live, can encompass some of these other questions that we've been talking about so far, too, about who do I want to spend my time with, how do I want to spend my time, what groups do I want to surround myself with, that the living community can help speak to some of those other lifestyle issues, too. Not for everybody, but for some, because there's so many alternatives now of options of both where to live and how to live. I was thinking, too, when you were talking about just the discrimination of single women in long-term care, I'm just becoming more and more aware of the trend of shared housing. There's a co-housing where people have separate homes and then share common space, but also literally sharing homes, friends buying a home together and making sure there's space for each so that you're not growing old alone if you don't have family or don't have other support. So where you live is really important. And even if you stay in your own house, and it occurs to me that's an important thing too, because there's finances involved if you need to make changes in your home to accommodate to changing health needs. So that would be
very
something.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, coming back to financial lifestyle planning, having a one-time goal of making some kind of renovation on the home if you're going to stay there, that should be enumerated with your financial planner so that they can accommodate that.
Great. So what about number 6? What are my needs?
Yeah, I'd to take 6, 7, and 8 together if that's okay.
That's great. They all do fit together. So what are my needs, what are my wants, and what are my dreams? Needs,
wants, and dreams. And happiness studies show that the biggest boost in happiness comes from getting our needs covered first. If anyone on the call remembers maybe when they were in college or just starting out in the world and you got your first apartment or you got your first car or made your first meal in your own kitchen, there's a lot of happiness that comes from providing for ourselves a roof over our head, our own clothes, transportation, et cetera, at first. But then as we begin to grow up and mature and go through life, we might want a little bit nicer car, like a little bit nicer place to live, like a little bit nicer kitchen. And those things also bring us happiness, but those are not needs. Those are more like wants. And the achievement of those is very fulfilling. But the boost we get in our happiness is not quite as much. And then we have things that are our dreams. Oh, it's my dream to live part-time in this part of the country and live part-time in this other part of the country. And fulfilling those kind of dreams is also a boost to our well-being and our happiness, but not as great as that first car and that first apartment. When it comes to figuring out what are my needs, what are my wants, what are my dreams, it helps in a financial lifestyle plan to prioritize these things and make sure, and your planner knows which ones are needs, which ones are wants, which ones are dreams. so that in allocating resources, the plan can say, okay, we definitely will need to cover these needs. This is how much it takes for me to feed and clothe and keep myself sheltered every month. But I also have these wants. And the part that I generally have difficulty with clients is getting them to even dream at all and think about what do you really wish for. If you don't put it in the plan, there's no chance it'll happen. So the point I really want to make is about putting those dreams and wishes in there in the plan so that it gives them a fighting chance of happening, and communicating those with your professional. Past achieving our dreams, there sometimes can be a happiness subtraction if we especially strive for too much and we find that we've got to finance it, maintain it, store it, operate it, rent it, then sell it. That's going into clutter more than it is into dreams. If someone is at the fortunate point where they have achieved their needs, their wants, and their dreams, the best boost that can come from in their happiness is to begin to share with others. Dreams might encompass making some sort of meaningful gift, and a gift without strings, a gift without expectations, just some sort of sharing kind of gift. So I wanted to talk about those three together because they each have different roles, and accommodating them in a financial lifestyle plan just gives the plan so much more meaning, and it makes it a lot more robust.
Excellent point. And it fits so into kind of the notion that tends to happen as we get older, where there's that sense of generativity that people have if they can financially, and it doesn't always have to be with money too, but that idea of sharing and giving back and making the world better, which can, maybe that's the level, needs, wants, desires, that once the basics are met, and if there's a sense that there is enough, that there's that abundance mentality rather than scarcity, so that you can share rather than feel like you have to hold on. It just seems really important. Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's go through 9 and 10, and then I have a couple of other questions, comments that have come up. But what about how will I stay mentally fit? That's a little separate from, it's tied in a little maybe with health resources, but it's separate also. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's tied in with health resources, staying mentally fit. As we all live longer, we're all going to be more at risk of dementia and cognitive decline, and staying mentally fit will generally keep us happier. Being engaged with those groups I discussed earlier and engaging in mind-expanding activities, whether it's just reading or the infamous doing crossword puzzles. How are you going to stay mentally fit and engaged and keep exercising your mind as well as your body? So that's an important, again, part of the financial lifestyle plan.
And the how will I stay engaged?
And that's tying into the sharing part of things. And staying engaged in a community, or staying engaged in a family, or just staying engaged in a relationship. How am I going to continue to grow and not stagnate? Because growth can happen at every stage of our lives. So whatever it takes for you to remain engaged and stay engaged and grow, that also needs to be given a priority in your plan.
And all of this makes such sense if people really step back and really what you're talking about, which I just think is so important in the way you integrate the financial planning with the life planning, that thinking about what do we need, what do we want, what are the dreams, how do we take care of ourselves, how is it different if you're alone versus if you're in a relationship. These are all such important issues to think about so you can create your own vision, but then to talk with your financial planner, because you, Holly, and other financial planners really, you do know the numbers and because it's the numbers, but more than the numbers. But money is real too, that we know that if people don't have the basics, there's Although your example is that people without a lot of money can be very happy, but there needs to be enough to be able to live and hopefully be comfortable in our country, but above a certain amount, but maybe more than people need, actually.
Yeah, and how if a financial planner is doing their job, they'll help somebody recognize when they are at that point and help them discover the boost of happiness they can get by sharing their excess with others and how to do that best.
Right.
Philanthropy is a huge part of being a good financial planner and having a happy life. I encourage people to share at whatever level of finances they're at, but if it's clear, as I've had numerous times with my clients, that there's more than enough, a lot of satisfaction can be gained from giving during lifetime instead of just leaving it in your will.
Exactly. Yeah, and to see the satisfaction it brings to other people. I wanted Bill from Houston, who seems to have an expertise in long-term care, had a comment that I wanted to share. He said that the reason insurance companies are moving toward gender-specific rates is exactly what you were saying, Holly. He said that since women live longer and present a higher risk to the insurance companies, then that women live longer and therefore present a higher risk to the insurance companies than men do. And he said it's the same rationale that insurance companies use when they charge an 18-year-old male who has a fast car more than they'll charge a 45-year-old man with a four-door sedan. So that it's the risk factor that the insurance companies experience. He also has stated that the rates for long-term care are also rising due to the medical advances that mean people are living longer. And I think also premiums increase the more that there are claims for it too. At least that's my understanding too. And he says that long-term care, that the best time to buy long-term care is in your 50s or early 60s because the premiums at older ages tend to be very expensive. So I wanted to share that.
At all. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, if you can.
No doubt about it. All of those factors enter into it. And I appreciate him bringing that up because it does impress the urgency of getting long-term care.
It's really important to and I think people erroneously think that Medicare is going to pay for long-term care, and it doesn't.
No.
There are definite limitations of what Medicare takes care of, so it's important to think about. So with each of these 10 questions, just back to them, how do you, as a financial planner and financial lifestyle planner, how do you work with your clients to help them figure out what's acceptable and what's ideal? Because it just seems like for all of these questions, there's multiple dimensions to them. And so I just wonder if you can just speak a little bit more on how, I just find it so useful and helpful, but do you work with your clients of trying to help them establish what their either level of risk is or what's okay enough or what's ideal and what's reasonable? How do you work toward that?
Yeah, we just simply take each goal that we have, and these 10 questions translate into different financial goals, like how much for a house and how much for a car and living expenses, et cetera. And I just talk with them about what would be an acceptable minimum that you'd be just happy with, and then what would be like ideal. And we're able to put those in the plan. Again, it's like asking someone to at least state what their wishes and dreams are. If you don't put the ideal in the plan, there's no chance it'll happen, at least putting it in there. And we shoot for the ideal first, but what we may find is that we have to take an awful lot of risk in the portfolio, and it might not happen then. So the chance of achieving the need goes down just because you're trying to achieve the ideal. We don't want that, so we back off, and it's a trade-off conversation that has several iterations to figure out, okay, I'm willing to live without this and go more toward acceptable on this one, and so that I can make sure that this other one gets achieved. So it's a back and forth, but if we're just using one number, then it's a lot less, it's just a flat kind of inflexible result.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do with all the information then, though? Say somebody's been due diligent and they've responded to all of this, and a client has answered the questions and you figured out the ranges. How do you create the financial lifestyle plan? What are some of the factors you need to look at or adjust for? Or how would you use the information?
Yeah, that's where some of the technical parts come in terms of understanding that all of these things or experiences that we want will most likely go up in cost over time. So some sort of accommodation has to be made for inflation. There will always be taxes, so the tax has to be incorporated. And in terms of comparing what we want, what we just enumerated, here's the lifestyle that I want. I've got an acceptable kind of lifestyle, I've got an ideal kind of lifestyle, versus here's what I have to make that happen. Okay, how big is that gap? And looking at, is it a great big gap or is it a little gap, and how might we bridge that gap? So that's the role, I believe, of the planner, is to understand the what do I have part as well, and how could we maybe bridge that gap, and what role could a different investment mix play in it, and what role could just making different trade-offs play in it. So that's the art part of putting together the plan.
Mm-hmm. And that's where it's really helpful, I think, if somebody works with a professional, a financial planner, and maybe, as I think becomes clear in this discussion, a holistic financial planner, or somebody at least open to looking at the whole, how all these factors fit together to lead to a good way to think about how to spend your money and happiness, how to live the kind of life you want. But how, I know you also study the effect of emotion on people's money decisions, and emotion's a really big part. What are some of the ways that you've experienced that emotions can positively and negatively impact this financial lifestyle planning process? How does that play in?
The positive impact of emotions on this process is, for me, when people cease to worry about the future, and knowing that they have a plan in place that's flexible, that can accommodate both opportunities and contingencies, and the happiness they receive just by having that in place is tremendous. The way emotions can sabotage a plan is when we forget that we have a plan, and and it's a natural human tendency, and we might go off and spend unnecessarily, or what I see most commonly is on the investing side of things, where some big event happens in the news and people do begin to worry, in my view, most of the time unnecessarily, about some event in the news and how's that going to sidetrack the plan, and forgetting that their plan has been designed to accommodate 99% of whatever might happen in the news. And this is completely natural, and it's part of the behavioral economic studies in terms of the way our emotions will cause us to both get greedy and to panic when it comes to especially the investment side of things.
So it does sound like there's so many variables that are involved in it, but what I'm hearing you say, and again, I just think it's helpful to underscore that there are many dimensions to the role of money, the role of happiness, the role of our emotions, the way we think about it, and then the way we think about it, and then what we're actually doing. So it does make me realize even more. I think I believe it anyway, but I think this wonderful presentation that you've brought to us of just the importance of finding someone you trust that you can talk about with this, and it could be with a financial planner. And what I also hear that I so welcome hearing is that you as a financial planner, Holly, know where you might need to use other resources, therapists or other coaches that might be helpful. And in the same way, I don't have the financial background, and certainly many of the issues you've raised, I can help people explore in non-financial ways, but I strongly feel that it's important for people to be able to talk with experts and professionals in order to get the help that they need. So there's a nice way of collaboration, I think, between the disciplines that can be really helpful for people.
No doubt about it. The financial planning and psychology professions need to do a lot more work together.
So I see that we're a little past the top of the hour. This has just been wonderful, Holly, and I just want to comment. Mary has just said this has just been an inspiring webinar, that she's eager to reevaluate their financial lifestyle plan to get it better tweaked to suit their lifestyle, and just gives a lot of thanks to both of us, and to you in particular, Holly, for talking about it. And I have read her book and have, as I said, heard her speak before, and I think all of you now see how wonderful it is how she integrates this financial background with this economic background, and I think it's just wonderful. Holly, thank you so much for being with us, and I just wonder if there are any last thoughts or takeaways that you'd like to just share with the listeners?
If you work with baby boomer clients or clients who have money issues, ask them about their relationship with money and explore and have a conversation about it.
Thank you. I underscore that. I think that's so important. And thank you again, Holly. This was just wonderful, and I want to thank everybody for being part of the call, and I really do encourage you to read The Mindful Money Mentality, How to Find Balance in Your Financial Future. Take care. Thanks.
You've been listening to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio with Dr. Dorian Mintzer. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show, listen to past episodes, or download our free retirement transition guide, visit revolutionizeyourretirementradio.com.